Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another close season video for the YouTube channel where I'm catching up with players, current players, former players, coaches, any football related folk that I can really before the action gets off and underway at the start of August. And I'm delighted this afternoon to be joined by former Crawley Town assistant manager from a few moons ago, but pretty much at the time that I started commentating on the Reds down in Sussex. It's a very good afternoon to Nathan Rooney. Nathan, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Gary. Thank you for having me on. I'm looking forward to spending the next half an hour with you talking all things Crawley and how things have gone since I left the club.
Okay, so let's start with where do we currently find you, Nathan? Because we know last job-wise you were out in Gibraltar, but I don't think that's where we're talking to you at the moment.
No, back in the northwest, back in sunny Blackburn, back with the family. So yeah, just enjoying a little bit of time. It's been a longer summer than expected. But no, all in all, it's been nice to catch back up with the people, and you know what it's like, just reconnect and enjoy more of the social life which I've got here.
So you were born and raised in Blackburn, and you say that you're back there now. So I guess the first thing I need to speak to you about, Nathan, is how did a Northwest boy such as yourself, who'd been with Blackburn and been with Fleetwood, end up coming down to West Sussex to be part of the Crawley Town management setup?
It was just in terms of our football roles. It was just a transition, and obviously I came in with Gabriele at the same time. Gabriele was spending time with me in the northwest at Fleetwood Town. I think that was just short of a 6-week period. And as you know, in football, you get your jobs off building your relationships and hopefully being half decent at what you're doing as well at the same time. So yeah, Blackburn lad, young lad, through the academy system. Luckily for me, Gabriele saw the strengths in me in terms of what he required at that time. And that's how it came about. But no, I really enjoyed my time down south. It was nice to explore and be around the Brighton area and obviously see the local places around Crawley. So no, it's fond memories, and Crawley is still close to my heart. It was a really good period of mine.
Having worked, Nathan, before you came to Crawley in sort of under 18 and under 21 setups, was it a big transition to get into sort of first team men's football in League Two? Was it a huge change?
Obviously, you've got to manage your players better in terms of your communication, and I think for someone my age who's still quite young in terms of the game and the industry, I think I was 28, just turned 28 when I came down to Crawley. So you're probably younger than probably 60% of the squad. So I think naturally you latch on to the younger people within the team and maybe the younger people within the club, but there was no time for that. Obviously, we had Gabriele, who was obviously a European coach who'd worked in England. But I think in terms of coming into the game at that time, I think that's when the game started to get younger anyway, naturally. I mean, you look at the squad that we had at that period as well. There's quite a few loan deals. There was, if you look at the office staff, there were some young people there who's now progressed up to senior roles now. So you know what it's like. I think the game's got younger. But I think the transition was the football doesn't change in terms of the delivery and the session planning. But obviously when it comes to that senior level, obviously you're planning for the opponent at the same time as well. So that was a transition from 23s football, trying to create player assets and obviously supporting managers each season. But to go to Crawley at the stage that we did, there wasn't a pre-season. I think it was the second week of September. So quick relationships, try and show the players your strengths and obviously build that connection. And that was probably the transition, getting into people nice and early. There was no time for rehearsal. It was straight into it. But no, good, enjoyed it.
Was that quite a good thing, though, Nathan, that wasn't a pre-season, it was straight into it and the games were immediately coming thick and fast? Or would it have been better to have that time to build those relationships with the players?
I think you look at it both ways. If you was asking me as a head coach now, I see myself as somebody who comes in and impacts, because I think 9 times out of 10, the modern game and the pre-seasons and the sports science side to the game is very similar now in terms of where that happens in each club. So I think coming in at September time was, okay, no problem. The respect has to change, the focus. The players' habits have obviously been drilled over the previous 2 months before we came in. So you can look at it both ways. Players are obviously accustomed to one way of working, but you know what it's like in the modern game. Managers are changing probably on average 14, 15 months. So I think the players already had that feeling. But in terms of that, no, I think the impacts, and I think looking back at the games, it worked, because if you look at the September and October results, they were probably our most influential period in terms of the season. I know things went on a dip and then came back up as the season went on, but I think answering the question now, yeah, I think it worked. I think the impact was there, and and the players had an Italian manager and obviously a young assistant. So yeah, it was good. It was a good impact period. But the players were fit naturally, and the squad was big. So I think the tools were already in front of us.
And when you look back on it, Nathan, you've already touched on things that you look back fondly at your time there. Do you have a game or a run of sort of 2 or 3 games that stand out where everything that you and Gabby were trying to do just sort of fell into place?
Well, obviously we changed the shape, didn't we? I think the lads have been drilled into a back 4 early doors, picked up some decent results. The transition happened with the manager. So I think it was about Gabriel initially wanted to go in and obviously put his print on, but I think we knew together that because the amount of work that had gone into him, you had to probably continue with the same shape and the same momentum at that stage. And I think we came in and watched you at Lincoln City. It won 1-0 with Felipe scoring the goal. And we thought even what we saw in there, that there was enough there to kickstart for the coming 6 weeks. But I think we went and we beat Newport 4-1 at home, and I think we had Yeovil as well. I think a couple of weeks after where it was 4-1, and me and Gabby were saying, okay, no injuries, we're scoring good amount of goals, the back line's solid. I think the only headache that we had was actually there was 2 or 3 players in each playing position, so it wasn't on the pitch. It was more of managing the so-called top-up group, but the lads who needed the extra work. So that run at the back end of September, October, where we went 4-1, 4-1, and I think we got ourselves against Southend United, and we got the replay down at Roots Hall. Sorry, is that right? So that period was very enjoyable. But then I think we went away to Tranmere on a wet Tuesday night, or was it a Saturday afternoon? And I think we got beat 5-1. So we soon had a little slap on the cheeks, and we realised that 4-1, 4-1 in an FA Cup game was positive, but we had to then manage the away mentality. So yeah, that was probably a strong period of ours.
Because there was also, I know they're more sort of deemed to be maybe one-off games. There was a victory over Norwich, wasn't there? Correct. There was the victory over Stoke City as well in the Cup. You know, as I say, one-off events, but under the lights at the Broadfield Stadium were great as a commentator, great for the fans. Managerially, must have been brilliant to get one over a higher league opposition.
Absolutely. But I think Crawley's always had the history in the Cups. And obviously, you can only talk about, I was only there for the year, and I know he had a successful period after I left in the Cup competition as well. I think United, weren't it? So I think there was always strength in depth in the group. Now, obviously, we did our research for 2 or 3 years prior when we was in the building in terms of what players had come in and which manager had been through the door. So the recruitment was very, very strong. So even resting 5 or 6 players from the previous weekend and going into them games against Stoke, we knew the players obviously there to impress. But because we had a good training regime and a good environment, I think the trust levels were there anyway. So I felt we were going to compete in all competitions. I don't know if there was Sussex Cup, we had a bit of a disappointment where we tried a few of the 23s and some of the players. But you've got to set them dips here and there to obviously benefit moving forward. But yeah, Cup games, strength in depth, strong squad, it all kind of fitted in place for us in the early stages.
So a happy time of your career to look back on, and I guess a good stepping stone for then what happened for you, because obviously, you know, ultimately it didn't work out for Gabby. He went back to Italy, and actually he was at the ground a couple of months back. It was great to catch up with him. He was a guest in the lounge for a league game against Colchester when Crawley were scrapping for the point to keep them in League Two, as it's been for the last season or so. And for yourself, you went sort of back up to the north and became first team coach at Carlisle. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. But it was a short role. I think it was 8 months. I think you get attached to managers, and I think going back to the first question about being that young coach and transitioning from 23s football to senior football, there's a period of time there where you've kind of understand that you're always a step closer to the sack, or you're always a step closer to being in that kind of limelight and under pressure all the time. So that transition of that mentality for me was important. But the Carlisle move was back up north. I'd worked with Stephen previously at Fleetwood Town. I wanted to commit as much as I could to Gabriele. But as you know, when you renew deals and you talk about different things, not everything falls into place. And that's what happened. So very, very hard for me to leave Gabriele in the club. We had a really fond relationship, and I know that Gabriele was held in high regard in terms of how he looks after people around the club and the fans. So that hurt. But I think luckily for me, I only had 4 or 5 days to transition into the next club. And like you said, I went to Carlisle, and I think we played in the first game of the season.
Yeah.
Up at Brunson Park. He wasn't happy with me, I should say, at that game on the car park. But we had Had a nice little kiss and a cuddle, and that was that. But no, yeah, went to Carlisle, but that was only 8 months, and Stephen unfortunately lost his role. And through loyalty, which I have done before, I also stepped to the side with him as well.
Okay. So then what happened from there, Nathan? Because I've got listed down that you moved on to Colne, then you had a little spell at Port Vale before you took the step to go over to the Rock and take over Bruno's Magpies.
I think people have probably looked at my CV and we've had a lot of discussions, and there's been a lot of clubs. But I think you've also got to show that ambition, that you're willing to interview, you're willing to put yourself out there, you're willing to progress, and at some stage you find your feet. And I'll touch upon them roles in a second. But where I am now currently, I know my strengths now. I've gone through that period of play. I've gone from being obviously the assistant and the first team coach, and fair play to Gabrielle and Stephen, a lot of responsibility in terms of you're the coach, set the game plans out, plan your sessions, and obviously learn from the managers at the same time. So I've always had that responsibility. Going to Colne was COVID period. You know what I mean? That was two things I thought was that, can I remain sharp? Can I build a team that competes? Because obviously you want your reputation to continue to come with you, but a different role. And that season we finished top of the league, but it was curtailed on Boxing Day. I think we only played 12 or just short of 15 games because everyone was social distancing still. And they didn't promote anybody. And Workington was in the same league. They've been disappointed with the same situation. So that happened there. I stayed on for the start of the following season, and then we got the call for Gibraltar. So, but in between that, like you mentioned, there was a Port Vale role where I went in as a head of coaching. So more off the pitch, more management of staff, more professional development. I'm quite happy to say it. Both of them two roles were there for me to remain focused, to remain sharp within the game, and to remain in the game. And for me, for the next professional role on the pitch to come back, and that's what happened overseas.
And with that position overseas, Nathan, let's just touch on what you've done, because you went out there in the 2021-2022 season, if I'm correct.
Yeah, New Year we had the first conversation. So yeah, January 22.
Okay, and you've just recently left the club, having achieved some wonderful success. So we'll talk about that success in just a moment. But my question is going to be, how different is football in Gibraltar to what it is over here? Are there marked differences in the way the games are played and the setup of games and training methods, etc.?
Yeah, I've answered the question quite a lot lately, and it's something I'm quite passionate about, because obviously Gibraltar is, because it's so small, it's not really recognised on, should we say, in the footballing world, because it's not broadcasted on Sky Sports News. And however, it's a UEFA league, and Gibraltar is basically, you've got South Americans, Mexican players, Colombians, all good players who've played at the top level over there in South America, as well as the local regional Spanish teams. So you've got Cadiz, you've got Seville, you've got Real Betis. So what you find in Gibraltar is the average age is quite high in terms of the players, around that 30-31 period. But your younger players come from Gibraltar. So the rule is you have to play 5 homegrown players within your starting 11. So your management of football at the side, as well as also your team is kind of 50% chosen for you because of the rule. You're kind of playing chess before the game's kicked off. Now, it's really good. It's really intriguing, because I see that as a development pathway for the national teams. And I think the Gibraltar national teams now are seeing the reward, should we say, of a lot of the younger players, because they're playing the top league in Gibraltar. So the 21s of the national team who are playing France tonight, they're just getting stronger and stronger as the seasons go by. But like touching upon the players, like I said, you're not managing 24 English lads. I mean, you're managing, maybe have four Spanish players. You might have 6 or 8 Gibraltarian players, 2 British players, a Canadian goalkeeper. You know what I mean? An Argentinian who's come to Gibraltar and he thinks that he can get 3-4 more years in his career. All top players and come from top agents. But because there's such an influx from different parts of the world, there's a lot of recruitment and there's a lot of, should we say, turnover in squads. So, yeah, small league, been very successful, recruited really well, and managed to listen to people, should we say. I mean, I've put responsibility in Jansen Daly, who's a sporting director there. You've got Haig, who used to be the owner at Watford Football Club, who's the director. And you've got Dean Holsworth. So all footballing people who's been in the game, but have kind of found themselves in Gibraltar trying to get this project up and running. so yeah, that's where we've been.
Dean Holdsworth is a name that strikes a big chord with me as a Brentford fan. Obviously, a man that has scored many, many goals for Brentford over the years on the way to the title back in 1992 and there or thereabouts. But what I was going to say, Nathan, was I don't know the history of the managers of Bruno's Magpies before you took over, whether there'd been anybody English before that. So how did the non-British players react to having an English person come in to take over the manager's role?
I think they've kind of come to grips with it early doors because it was an English-run club with the ownership. But at the same time, yes, 80% are all Spanish-speaking. So I landed on my feet, if I'm honest with you, in terms of having strong characters within the dressing room. I think they come from a period of play where they'd lost a lot of games. The squad was strong. I believe they weren't training properly. And so I think 2 or 3 of the players had come from Real Bologna, La Bologna, which is over the border in La Linea. Very strong team, very strong squad. Been up and down these Spanish divisions. And so I knew that the professionalism in terms of the players, and they were willing to translate the language at the same time. Staff, obviously bilingual. So you've got Gibraltar-based people who obviously they can speak English as well as Spanish. So you've got that natural transition, shall we say, with the language straight away. So everything in terms of recruiting the right staff, having the right characters in the dressing room, they were willing to pass that message on because they felt that there was a difference straight away in terms of how the environment was being managed. So just take you back quickly to January 22. I came in after the call and the discussions, and the team had to win 2 back-to-back games to make the top 6. And obviously, a lot of European divisions do split come the Christmas period. So we won the first 2. I think it was on the 10th or the 13th of January. And then we had to play a second one, and we managed to break into the top 6. So straight away, with the 2 back-to-back wins where they hadn't won for a while, that built confidence straight away within the camp. So they knew that what we were talking about and implementing was the right way to move forward. And then from that period, within that 4 or 5 months, we just flew. Clean sheet after clean sheet, and we got ourselves into European competition and the first Rock Cup final for the club. But it's a big story because I don't know if you've seen it in the press. There's a lot about the pub team making European football. When they say a pub team, the name did come from the Bruno's Bar, which is Bruno's Magpies,
right?
Which is like 8-9 years old. So from a club who's only built at that period to then compete with Lincoln in Europa, it's been a really enjoyable story to be a part of, and obviously very proud to head it up.
And the back end of last season, just before you left, was really, really successful, wasn't it? You won the Rock Cup, you beat the Lincoln Red Imps, who were you were saying to me before we started recording, sort of perennial winners of it. So for your club to come in and sort of take that glory away from them was a huge, big story, as well as getting back into Europe again.
Absolutely. It's changed the way that the country look in terms of how they manage a league, because I know, you know yourself, any top team in the country, the best players in United, they kind of fill up the national teams anyway. That's how it works. So a lot of Lincoln Red Imps players play for the national team. So the support there and the transition of finance, it makes them strong year on year. So we actually played them on the 21st of December. 18th of December, and we beat them for the first time. And they hadn't been beaten in the league for nearly 3 years. So that kind of raised a few eyebrows. And then from there, we had a bit of a dip after Christmas, but we kind of got ourselves in a period where we were picking up results. We got our injuries back at the right period, and we managed to get ourselves into the final against Lincoln, and tenacity and togetherness and the backing of the Gibraltarian fans, because, I mean, everyone likes an underdog. And what we managed was, and even the Lincoln chairman did say, I mean, what you've done against us over the last couple of years is something we've not experienced. So, but it's all been left in a good place, and everyone's happy that there's another club now on the scene. And yeah, but also the National Cup in Gibraltar, like I think a few other nations, if you win the National Cup, you automatically take a European spot anyway. But we'd already made the European place prior to that. So there's you've always got 2 ways of trying to get into that European position.
And I noted down as well that the final went to a penalty shootout. How were you during the penalty shootout? Had you, and I know managers get asked it a lot, had you practiced penalties in the eventuality that it might go that far?
We practiced it, but we knew the day before we shared a facility that Lincoln was actually training 30 minutes after we had trained. And so I was constantly being vigilant. I had the staff around the barriers and everything else what went with it. So we split the group up. So we had one group at the top, one group at the bottom, and we tried to manage it from that side. So we did practice it. We actually had a bit of a spy actually at the gate one day, so we tried to move things around. But that's Gibraltar. There's only 5 or 6 facilities, and you've got to be very, very cute with your allocations as well. But no, we had time to practice them.
And now that you've left, Nathan, it was obviously you've taken that decision yourself to move on. Was that prompted by the success that you'd had, and you thought that you'd just taken the club as far as you could, and you now wanted to test yourself in a different environment?
I think yes. I think from my side, it's not about leaving the players and the club where it is now currently, but I think away from the club, I just needed a little bit more time. You know what I mean? I've also got a wife who plays football, and you know, so we're constantly every summer we're probably battling out for the next new contract and how things roll within this game. So for me, it was I've won the cup. We've taken the club to European position twice. I do think there's still unfinished business there, and you know how the game works is there's a lot of managers tend to return to clubs in the future years, but who knows? Never say never. But I think in terms of where the club is and where your Lincoln Redimps are and your other clubs, I'm kind of delighted that I've left, and hopefully for them, they've obviously made strides now and appointed someone a little bit older than I have. So who knows? He might take it to the next level. But I just think this time of period, family wise, just short of 2 years being away, hopefully now we can maybe go on the next adventure together.
I think we should maybe just expand a little bit on the fact that you gave mention to your wife playing football. Some people might not know what that's all about, so maybe you should expand a bit, because she doesn't just play football; she plays for Liverpool, and she's a ladies international.
Yeah, she'll be happy that she's made this interview. She seems to make every interview to get on, shall we say? She's come to the end of a contract at Liverpool. She's had a really good 5 years there. Starter for Welsh international team, some really strong campaigns. So there's a possibility that Rhiannon's going to be maybe going to Spain as well, or maybe a different overseas country. So that's why I've taken a bit more time. I think it was important. So we're going on a little travel next week. We're going to be visiting some clubs, get a few opportunities to speak to different people and catch up with different people over there. And but yeah, my aim and my passion is to try and get ourselves back into maybe the Spanish 3rd or Spanish 4th division. Try and be as close to Rhiannon as we can, and try and enjoy. You know what I mean? I'm not saying Rhiannon's coming to the end of her career, but if you look at it on paper, Rhiannon's obviously probably got another good 4 or 5 years playing, and I'm hopefully starting my managerial career. So we're kind of going to cross over that at this period. So I'd like to see her play. She'd like to see me work. But as you know, it doesn't always fall into place with football. So we'll give it our best.
So what does the future hold for Nathan Rooney? You're taking your time. You're going to select the right job that you think fits in for you, fits in with the family, etc., etc. You did say to me beforehand that you've got some irons in the fire. Ideally, do you have an idea of where you would like to be and what sort of job you'd like to be doing?
Yeah, I think when I came back from Gibraltar 7 weeks ago, there was interest from a couple of League Two and national teams. So it's quite close to getting that over the line. But I think reflecting back, I think you get to a point where I think where I am now, it's quite unique. There's not many British coaches working abroad. You obviously got Will Still, who's obviously in France, but he's working at the top level of football. So I think for me now, I want to explore the European market. I definitely, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, I'd like to explore the Spanish market. It's really attractive, because in my spare time away from Gibraltar, I would cross over the border. I would go and watch the Segunda level in terms of the Segunda Prem. Like I mentioned, La Bologna, you've got Algeciras around the corner, you've got Malaga up the road, top clubs, top teams, and really attractive football. And for me, with the staff that I've got available, with the pool of players that I've worked with and the people in the area, I think that would make sense for me to stay within that area, should we say. And obviously the lifestyle, at some stage that will have to change. She'll probably make a decision of when the family comes. But for now, I think it's important not to keep jumping. I think I've done my 2 years there, and I think I want to go and explore the next one, which is maybe Spain, should we say.
If we just complete the circle then, Nathan, and we go back to the time at Crawley and talk about what's happened there since you left, because obviously I'm still there in the commentary box. There's probably people that are still there, back office staff and admin staff and people like that from your time there. I'm sure you keep an eye on what's happening in the club. How did you view the last season? Because from a commentary perspective, it was really tough. You know, 5 managers over the course of the season is going to be tough for any side. New owners came in last year. It hasn't really materialised the way that everybody was hoping that it would. There was a huge plethora of signings that came in sort of last summer. Dom Telford came as the top scorer in League Two the previous season. And they survived, but they just about survived by the skin of their teeth. How do you, as an outsider who's been an insider, how do you view what happened at the club?
I think starting on terms of what you just said about having 5 managers in one season, we know that's not healthy for anybody. Now, in terms of you look back, if we bring it back 5 or 6 years where you've had managers who's been there for a good amount of period, should we say, 18 months in this game is a good amount of period, 2 years. When you start talking about building a squad and obviously building a club, for me, the clubs that I've been at, Crawley is more fan orientated, shall we say. The office staff, if you look on average, they're probably there for over 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. So there's a reason why people want to stay at the club. Now, as you know, when any time the ownership changes or new ideas come in, or should we say, try and reinvent the wheel, what you can't forget is the business can be reinvented and how you want your businesses to operate. But at the end of the day, the game doesn't change. So, you know what I mean, at the same time, it becomes obviously the trust period again. Who are you going to have in them positions to run that department, and which people do you want in that lane to run that department? And it has been quite, I won't say upsetting, but you get taken back from it, don't you? Especially when you've been somewhere and you've built them relationships. But your calibre of player in terms of the Telfords, in terms of your Nadersons, but in terms of the amount of players that's been turned over as well, I think I don't know the answers to the question what I asked. Are they unhappy because of the football side and the playing side or the coaching side? Or have they been unhappy in terms of how things have been run? Because players don't need noise. Players don't need outside influences. You know, players are there to train, they're there to work hard, and they're there to get themselves at maximum fitness. So, and young players want their careers to progress. So they all want to be on the pitch. I think moving forward, I think it's really important that, like I said, your office staff are in place. Like to yourself, Gary, you've got a very, very close-knit relationship with the club. You want to be there. You want to see him progress. So I think that's the starting block for next season. I think you've got a very strong manager in terms of Scott. He's obviously come in. He's taken that pressure on. He's left a good club, a very good club. But Crawley's following and fan base and, like you said, previous cup runs, I'm hoping that there's enough there to kickstart the new season. But it's not for me to say the owners have got to put money in or you've got to do this. I think if your manager's right and your office staff is right and the trust is there, then that's got to be the starting block for this season. But I think people might have learned from them lessons, I'd like to think.
Okay. I think the fans feel, Nathan, that Scott is the man who obviously did enough to steady the ship and got them over the line. And when I spoke to him post-match towards the end of the season, he basically said, I've achieved success really with 2 clubs this season. I took Swindon pretty much to the playoffs and I ensured that Crawley didn't go down. Because I think a lot of people were feeling that if Crawley dropped out into the National League, it might have been a very long way back. It could have been sort of a relegation after a relegation. But I think the fans now feel that he's the man in place, and there's just a few questions to be answered by the owners about, you know, who's likely to come in. And when we talk about people that left over the last couple of seasons, you know, fans' favourites, Glenn Morris, Tom Nichols, players like that, all going. Yep. And I think the fans just want to see just the club to be owned correctly now, moving forward, and the right sort of players to come in to get themselves back up the table where Scott always said to me, they belong. Crawley belong in the Football League. You know, be that League Two, top half, League One, bottom half, wherever it may be. Crawley belong in the Football League.
I think, we go back to the word ownership again. There's a reason why an owner wants to run a club. So that there has to be a focus there. There has to be a reason for that to happen. So I'd like to think that the finances and the support network from this year is going to be there from day one. I'd like to think so. But I think in terms of the manager that you've got, if you leave in a club who's touching around the playoffs to then come to a club who need you, I mean, have they recruited Scott for the football? I'd like to think so, because Swindon were playing attractive stuff. They were picking up results. Or have they recruited Scott because he's a strong character and it needed somebody with broad shoulders to remain in the Football League? Now, I think the question to maybe not just you and the fans or the club is, the next step, is it about bringing maybe a familiar face back to the club to make it feel like it was, when you say steady the ship, support the manager in terms of taking the roles off him that he doesn't want to be doing or doesn't need to be doing, and have that fan base in terms of that relationship growing again from the side, getting the gates, getting the noise back up, and then allowing the football work to happen naturally. Because like you said, the calibre of players that you've got 2 strikers there who, if at full confidence, at full fitness, they're both going to be putting 18 to 20 goals in each. So you're going to have the numbers on that side. So the focus, the recruitment side, I don't know who's in there now doing that, or the full responsibilities with the manager. There's probably just 2 key areas. Keep them fans smiling because they deserve it, because they do everything that they can to come to the games. And by doing that, can you get that head of recruitment or that director of football perfect who can give Scott his license to go and do what he's excellent at? And that's any job. But I think Crawley, like I said when I started the interview, there's just a fondness there with you've got 9-year-old fans, or even younger than that, and you've got your 85-year-old fans who are sat in the stands, and you don't always see that at football clubs. So hopefully that will kickstart this season again.
Nathan, I'd love to carry on chatting. Time has caught up with us very, very sadly, but it's been great to catch up with you. I'm glad things are working out brilliantly for you. All the very best with your future endeavours, wherever that takes you, and also to Rhiannon as well, wherever she ends up. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us this afternoon.
Thanks, Gary.
Anybody who wants to like or comment or subscribe, there should be something coming up when I post it on the YouTube channel a little bit later. I'll stick it on the social media as well, Nathan, and tag you in it. And you can get it out to your followers as well. And hopefully we'll have a catch up again very, very soon. Maybe when a new job is in place for you, we can have a catch up about where that's going to take you and your future plans. But Nathan, brilliant. Thank you so much. As I say, thanks for your time this afternoon. Have a great weekend. Enjoy the sunshine and enjoy the break when you go away next week.
Thanks, Gary. All the best.
Thanks a lot, Nathan. Take care, mate.
All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.